Boy, do we have a good one here today. In this one, I'm just gonna be revealing everything, exactly how we're able to do over 6 million a month with branded dropshipping. Again, if you've watched some of my previous videos, I make this disclaimer all the time. The 6 million is not coming from one brand. This is made up of 9 brands, a mixture of client accounts and personal accounts. But in this video, I'm gonna show you exactly how I've been able to build an agency to be able to sustain these kind of levels of ad spend and revenue for our clients and our personal accounts. Because if there's one thing that I've learned after doing these kinds of numbers, it's that you cannot do this on your own. And I know it sounds fucking cheesy, but business is all about building a system, hiring the right people. And in this video, I'm gonna show you how to do exactly just that. Because you have to realize that you only have 24 hours in a day, yourself. You yourself, you have 24 hours in a day, of which, let's say 8 hours of that you're getting good work done. So that is your bandwidth. You only have 8 hours a day to focus on creatives, landing page, media buying, operations. You're juggling all these things. And if you're doing this on your own, which most of you probably are if you're just starting dropshipping, you are going to be your own bottleneck. Because sure, you might be able to focus on creatives and you get that pretty far down this tube, and maybe you're doing an output of 5 creatives a week, maybe 10 creatives a week, but you're really focusing a lot on creatives. But the problem with that is your landing page probably sucks. In a week, you maybe spend 2 hours on your landing page. And maybe in terms of operations, you haven't even spent any time. And in terms of adding additional products or improving your product or your branding, that's not even on the radar. So you have to realize that this is your current bandwidth. And for most of you watching this, this is probably your situation. It's you, and you probably have like one part-time video editor. And you have to realize everyone is going to be at this point at some point in their career. And that's because you have no leverage in your business. You have a lack of systems. Maybe one month you do 50K, but then you drop down, you do 25K. But then you have a really good month, you work really hard, you do 75K. You have some creatives that work well, they're able to sustain a good amount of spend, but then they die out the next month. And you took your foot off the gas, you weren't focusing on creatives because everything was really good, and you started focusing on maybe adding additional products or trying to focus on something else within your business. So then you drop down to 15K and then you bounce to 40K. And this is what you have to understand is without leverage, when it's just you are being the bottleneck of your business. So that means you might work really hard one month and you'll do 50K, 75K. But if you're not keeping your foot on the gas the entire time, you're gonna drop down. You're gonna have these natural ebbs and flows. And without having this leverage, your output is probably somewhere around 3, maybe 10 creatives a week. But what you need to understand is if you're able to hire the right people, all of a sudden, you have a creative strategist, you have 3 video editors. You've just multiplied your bandwidth from 8 hours a day of working hours to now your business has 40 working hours going every single day across you and some of your team members. The moment that you start making hires and hiring the right people where you can trust them to actually manage a certain aspect of your business, that's when you're gonna increase your bandwidth. And that's when you actually start to create a real business. And honestly, for everyone watching this video, you might be higher level than this, but if you aren't and you're just doing drop shipping and it's mostly just you and a video editor, you should really be striving to at least hire 1 creative strategist and multiple video editors, because that will, again, increase your bandwidth. And before, let's say you could only do 3 creatives a week. After hiring, you now have a team on board. You're not your bottleneck. You're gonna do that same 50K a month. Maybe you're gonna hire people. You're gonna go down to 40K a month. But all of a sudden, now you have a team and you have a system of creative strategists pumping out briefs and scripts. They're sending them directly to video editors. You're not even hands-on this process. And all of a sudden you have just a Google Drive folder where you could go into it every day and you have 5 new ads to launch. What would that do to your business? If you had this predictable system that was feeding you 5 new creatives every single day, what do you think would happen to your brand? Because at least in my experience, that's the one thing that we change whenever we onboard a client or when we start working with someone. And most of the time, I can tell you where you're probably at just based on how many creatives you're producing every single week. If you tell me you're producing 5 creatives every week, I know that your revenue is going to be up and down like this. But if you're telling me that you're producing 30 creatives a week, I just know that you're going to have this strong baseline. You're actually going to have a real business, a sustainable, predictable business. Because you have to understand that the great thing about dropshipping is it's so leveraged in nature already. Ads are in nature literally the most leveraged thing that you can do. Like, what else could you do where you could change a number on a screen and all of a sudden you're just making more money? And it's definitely not that easy, especially if you're doing like 3 creatives a week. And if you're doing 30 creatives a week, it makes it a lot easier to just move that number up. But you yourself are probably going to struggle to create 30 ads a week without a team. And this is the one thing that you have to understand if you're just starting out dropshipping, or you've seen some success, but you're kind of bouncing around, you're testing products, is that you will never scale without a team. And that's the one thing that I'm really trying to stress in this video, is that you have to create a real business. Because you have to understand, if we didn't have a team, there is no way we would even be close to this 6 million a month mark. There's just no way you're gonna be running a 500K to $1 million a month brand all on your own. So your focus has to be on reinvesting into growth, especially if you're at this stage where you're kind of bouncing around, you're at 50K, 25K, 75K, or maybe you're even doing less than this. Maybe it's actually 25K and then 15K and then 5K. You have to be reinvesting every single dollar of profit, especially at the start, into the growth of your business. Because you have to understand that dropshipping brands just naturally are gonna hit a ceiling because you lack systems to actually sustain that level of ad spend or that level of revenue. And again, most of the time to scale a brand, you just have to create the systems to be able to sustain a high level of ad spend. And the way that you're gonna do that is gonna be by hiring a creative team that is going to be scripting your ads, editing your ads, and pretty much managing that entire process so that you don't really have to move a muscle. But obviously that is also very, very difficult to do. And I know I'm harping on hiring in this video. And for a lot of you, that's probably very overwhelming. You've probably never made a hire in your life. You might have a few freelancers that work for you on an hourly basis. But trust me when I say that investing in building a team and creating systems is literally the highest ROI activity that you could do if you're running a brand. And again, this is coming from someone that our agency is helping these brands sustain this level of spend. So we're not just doing this for one brand, for our own brand. We're helping 9 different brands sustain these high levels of ad spend. We have dozens of video editors working for us at any given time. You have to understand that there is also a skill to hiring, and it's the kind of thing that you sort of just have to do. You have to hire and fire and hire and fire until you find the right people. And then naturally you'll just figure out, okay, this is the kind of person that I'm looking for. And you'll kind of set your own criteria as to what you're looking for out of a hire, because naturally at the start, if you're just running like a 25K a month dropshipping brand, you're not going to be recruiting the best talent. You're going to be recruiting people that are like freelancers. But all of a sudden, when you start building businesses where you're doing 100, 500K, $1 million a month plus, you're going to be hiring way better talent because one, you'll be able to pay them more. And 2, they will be bought into what you're doing because they see that they are actually having a real impact on a business. And everyone wants to be a part of something big. So you're just gonna have better hires when you're doing 500K, $1 million a month plus. But anyways, I think I got on a little bit of a tangent there. Moral of the story is that you really need to be working on creating a real business and reinvesting as much of your profit into growth. And when I say growth, I mean hiring teams and building systems. So if you're still watching this video at this point, I want you to commit to aggressively reinvesting into your business and making some of these hires. And I know it's gonna be daunting. You might wanna micromanage these people because you hire them, and all of a sudden you're paying a video editor $800 a month and you've never paid someone $800 a month before. But that's what you have to get used to doing. And especially if you want to get to these big numbers, you have to recognize that the more you're investing into your team, the more unreasonable it is for you to fail with dropshipping. If you have a full-fledged team of creative strategists, video editors pumping you out 30 ads a week, I can guarantee you that you will make money. But again, it all comes down to this numbers game of how many creatives a week are you able to produce. So without me harping on this anymore, I'm gonna break down the exact team structures that you're gonna need at every step of the way. But anyways, let's get into it. So the team structure needed, and I put this as phase 1. And realistically, at this point, you're still kind of a slave to your own business, to be honest, because you're managing everything. You are still the glue that kind of runs your business. And obviously there's a few other hires that you might want to make at this range, depending on, what you want to do in your business. At least in my experience, I'm really a big fan of continuing to do my media buying. Even when scaling up to like really big numbers, I find it just helps you keep a good pulse on your business in terms of what's working and what's not. But for everyone watching this video, if you're under 100K a month, you should have a creative strategist and a video editor. And if not one video editor, you should probably have at least 2. Because honestly, the thing with video editors as well is they are not going to be overly reliable, especially as I was mentioning before. If you're in this like doing like 20K a month, you're going to be hiring like freelance video editors. And even if you're paying them a supposed full-time salary, they might not be overly committed to you. So I usually recommend hiring 2 video editors, have a creative strategist to be writing some scripts for you as well. You're probably going to have to train them up. At this stage, you also want to continue to do creative strategy work. One thing that I see people make a mistake all the time is they just hire a creative strategist and all of a sudden they say, okay, it's not my job anymore. I've hired someone. But you have to realize like you're not going to hire someone that just like knows how to make creatives that all of a sudden sustain like hundreds of thousands of dollars of spend when you're paying them like less than 5K a month. If you want to hire someone that actually knows how to do like big numbers with ads, you're probably going to have to give them rev share, or you're just going to have to pay them a fat salary. Alternatively, you could also look at agencies or so on. Again, this is something that we normally do at our agency. Right now, we are capped out. We can't take anyone else on. But with that said, if you do want me to help you build this structure and pretty much hire people, hire video editors, find the right creative strategist, and overall just help you build these entire systems in your business, then I will leave an application link below in the video. This would be to work with me one-on-one and get direct calls with me. It's not the type of thing that I'm going to offer to most people. Again, this is going to be like if I think that you actually have the potential to do big numbers, then maybe I'll help you out, because I don't want to work with low-level people that are still trying to find their winning product. So with that said, like if you do want any sort of help in terms of like building out a team, building out your creative systems, making better ads in general, then you can click the first link in the description and apply. But at the same time, like this video should give you a lot of information as well. So I'm not an overly salesy guy. If you want to apply, go for it. If not, watch the videos and I'm sure you'll learn something anyways. But yeah, anyways, this is 0 to 100K a month. Let's move into the 100 to 1 mil per month mark. This is where you're actually starting to build a real business. And obviously on the higher end of this revenue range, you'll probably have a bigger team than what you see here. I'd say this is going to be an average team for if you're doing somewhere between like 200K and like 600K a month. This is what your team is probably going to look like. So obviously you'll still have yourself here. Again, you're kind of the glue to everything. You're going to be managing the creative strategist, customer service rep. You might have an administrative VA that's just helping you with fulfillment, maybe doing some research for you, so on. But the main thing that you're going to be growing here, and in order for you to grow from, let's say 100K to $1 million per month, is growing this creative team. So if you want to be approaching that 1 mil per month, you're probably going to need a second creative strategist working alongside, or some sort of copywriter, script writer that can actually write briefs. But then you'll need a ton of video editors, because again, for each video editor you hire, and this is going to greatly depend on the editor and the types of videos that you're creating, is they're only going to be able to create like maybe 2 to 4 concepts a day. And that's if you have them full time. If they're doing long form VSLs, they might only be able to create 1, maybe 2 a day, depending on, if you're giving someone a 9-minute VSL to put B-roll over the entire thing, it might take them quite a while. But this is where you're gonna have to be ultimately hiring a ton of video editors. So you might even need 6 video editors to try and approach this 1 mil a month mark. Again, not uncommon to do so. One thing you're also gonna need is probably some sort of like creator coordinator. And this is pretty much just going to be a person that is responsible for managing creators. Because again, if you're trying to approach like $1 million a month mark, probably going to need custom content. You're not just going to get here with like stock footage and 11 labs as voiceover. You're going to need to be shipping your product to creators and getting them to actually make content. And that's something that you don't really want to burden your creative strategist with. You really want your creative strategist to be focusing on writing briefs, coming up with new creative ideas, coming up with new formats to test, whether it's VSLs or image with long form ad copy or mashup ads. You don't want them having to go back and forth on email every day with like 9 different creators that you have your product sent out to. So usually I'd hire a creator coordinator for that. This can usually be kind of like a VA. This could be the role of your administrative VA if you just don't give them that much work. Personally, I like having somewhat of like an assistant. So that's why I always have an administrative VA that just helps me pretty much clear my plate of shit that I don't want to do. But anyways, this is phase 2. This is 100K to $1 million per month mark. And again, this is where you start building a real business. But also at this point, you still are kind of the glue to this business. So if you are going on vacation or something, you're probably still going to have to stay pretty plugged in. Next, we are getting into the third phase. And this, you'll all of a sudden see, is a lot more comprehensive. There's a lot more moving pieces, a lot more team members. And if you're just starting out with dropshipping, this is probably going to overwhelm you because you're not going to have any fucking clue of like how to manage all these people because you've never done it before. But let's just break down the overall team structure. So what you'll see here is this is where you probably want to hire a head of operations or a COO or have some sort of partner that you give them some small piece of the pie, whether it be rev share or again, just big salary with some sort of bonus structure, because this is where you actually can start to sort of exit the operations, the daily operations of your business. So at this point, you are actually going to be seen as more of a CEO. I wouldn't consider you a CEO when you're like at these stages. It's one of the most cringe fucking things I see is when people call themselves a CEO and it's like, bro, you manage 2 VAs. You're not a fucking CEO. But honestly, at phase 3, when you're managing like a head of operations, you have all these different team members, you finally earned your stripes, you're probably somewhat of a CEO. So most of your day-to-day operations is pretty much gonna be managing this head of operations and making sure that they're keeping you in the loop of what's going on with all these different departments. So the goal of the head of operations is if there's ever any big issues in any of these different departments, whether it be with your creative strategist, or your data and reporting, those problems should be first going to your head of operations and they should be figuring that out because ultimately that's what you're going to be paying them for. You don't want your head of operations just like getting this information from them and just feeding it directly to you every time. I will say that at this stage, you still probably want to be somewhat plugged into like your creative strategist and feeding them ideas because if you got to this point, you probably know what the fuck you're doing. So you want to be kind of sharing your insights with your creative strategist as well. At this point, you're going to have this creative strategist that might actually be more so considered like creative director, and they're going to be managing a creator coordinator. They might be managing like a junior copywriter, maybe even 2 copywriters at this point. Depends on how many like creatives you're actually producing. If you're doing some static ads as well, which at this stage you probably should be doing some static ads, you'll have probably a part-time or maybe even full-time graphic designer, depending on how many creatives you're doing. And at the bottom of all this, you're gonna have a fuck ton of video editors because again, you're not gonna get to this stage if you're not pumping out a shit ton of creatives. So I'm gonna say you're probably gonna have somewhere between like 3 and like 7 different video editors. One thing that I also didn't include on this page is actually someone that creates your landing pages for you. I would put that under the head of operations somewhere, but personally, that's something that I like to do myself. At this stage, you will have like a head of customer service. You might also have a junior customer service rep because when you're at this point, you're going to have a shit ton of people that are hounding your brand, thinking that you're a scam, especially if you're drop shipping still. If you're shipping from China and your shipping times are somewhere between like 7 and 15 days, you're definitely going to need like at least 2 customer service reps because you're going to have people hounding your support email every day, just like asking where their product is and so on. Again, I like having the administrative VA and the data and reporting analyst. And yeah, that's pretty much phase 3, to be honest. And I always like to say that your ability to scale to $1 million per month really hinges on how effectively you're able to, build out this team and build effective systems so that your creative director knows exactly what he should be doing on a day-to-day basis, and your copywriter knows the best practices of how to format VSLs and how to write copy and how to brief your editors on how to produce mashup ads and all this sort of stuff. If you're not able to effectively communicate that sort of stuff to your team, you're probably going to struggle to get to this level in the first place. And if you do, you might struggle to stay at that level. So at this stage, you really just have to figure out how to find the best people to work within your business and ultimately keep them incentivized correctly, because at this stage, you're not just going to have a bunch of VAs working for you. This is where you're running like a proper brand. You're going to have legitimate people working for you. You're going to be paying people's monthly salaries. But yeah, I hope this was valuable to you. To be honest, I see so many people nowadays just, stuck at this like 0 to 50K a month mark. Most of the time, it's because you are your own bottleneck. So that's the one thing I want you to get out of this video, is that you need to increase your bandwidth, because right now your bandwidth is just this tiny little tube, 8 hours a day. And what you need to effectively try and do is just increase the bandwidth essentially and increase this amount of work hours that are going into your business every single day, because ultimately that will be what allows you to increase the output of creatives that you're producing every single week. That will lead to more scale. At the end of the day, it is kind of just a numbers game. If you're able to produce a high number of creatives every week, probably gonna scale. But anyways, I know I've been kind of going off on this video for quite a while now, so I don't want to keep you any longer. Hopefully this was valuable to you. And if you want to work with me one-on-one so that I can build these systems and help you implement all of this stuff into your business, then again, click the first link in the description below and you'll be able to apply. I'm going to be super selective with who I take on with that, just because I don't want to waste my time working with low-level people. So fill out the application down below and we'll see if it makes sense to actually work together. But without further ado, I will see you in the next video.